chill out, Scotty. Right, here we go.
Can you see it?
All right, yes.
Okay.
Any second now, the kids will come streaming through the bedroom door, pounce on the back of my neck. Right, so like I was saying, I wanted to share an example of how a previous student had approached this slide, but I didn't want to just post it directly on the classroom because I wanted you to try and explain the benefits and limitations from your own experience as much as possible. So here we go. Starts off, so let's just concentrate on the one you've done already. So you've already attempted this row here on keyframe animation, looking at the benefits and limitations. So let's see what this student has written. We'll just kind of paraphrase. So starts off a little bit waffly. The animation is very simplistic and easy to enact. Little effort is needed. But the key things here is an explanation of the technique. You need to set the beginning and ending keyframes for a particular movement. This technique is effective for basic movement because, and then we are highlighting this main benefit here, the idea that when you set a starting position and an end position in Blender or in the software, the computer fills in the frames in between. That's known as tweening. And then we've got an example, and this example based on the grapple activity that the student did, and exactly the same one you've done, except you've done it from a video. So, for example, you can animate a cube from one location to another. These key positions are known as keyframes, and the frames in between are tweened. And then what I'd like you to do is explain a bit about the functionality of the dope sheet, the keyframe editor in Blender. You may need to do a little bit of research here, so I would like you to maybe look on the Blender manual page online, or watch the kind of extended video on this process that's linked here, rather than just my 5-minute recreate this thing, because I go into it in this slightly longer explanation here. So a bit of information on the benefit of using keyframes in this dope sheet, the fact that you can control keyframes. So you can scale the sequence out to stretch out the time it takes for things to happen. You can speed things up, slow things down. You can grab individual keyframes, you can delete them, you can replace their value very easily. Anything in Blender that has a value, so color, focal length, location, rotation, scale, anything that's got a sort of, that you can control in Blender, you can keyframe. So you can keyframe the brightness of a lamp or the focal length of a camera to zoom in and out, but you can also keyframe the location of an object to create animation. Right, so a bit of an explanation to what the dope sheet does. And then the limitations, and one of the key things I want to point out was these techniques wouldn't exist if they weren't a benefit for animators. So there's going to be more benefits than limitations, really. And I'd like to think about it in terms of the benefits that they have versus sort of traditional methods. So previously, before digital technology, an animator would draw out the keyframes. It would draw out a character in one pose, and then in the next key pose, and then somebody else would fill in the drawings, the 24 frames needed for each second in between those key poses. Yeah. So anyway, the limitations, I think, is going to come from you messing about, your experience. Just explain what you felt was challenging about it. The fact that it can get really complicated, and the dope sheet can get quite cumbersome. The more keyframes, the more things you're animating. You guys did a cube in a sphere for this task, but imagine you've got an armature with 3 bones for every finger, and every single bone has got a keyframe in a different position. It can get slightly overwhelming. This is not necessarily true, actually. Unfortunately, with tweening, the frames that are automatically created are hard to manipulate. Well, you then go in and you add the keyframes in between to manipulate the in-between stuff. So that's not actually the best response there. I'd rather you sort of discussed it based on your experience of how complicated it can get and so on. and that it can be difficult to see, to tell what frame is doing what. All right, and then today you're going to be doing the shape key stuff, also known as vertex animation. This is the technique that allows you to grab a vert and animate that individual vertice position in 3D space, so deforming the mesh. So it's exactly the same format, explaining the technique a little bit. So it's for deforming a mesh. What's it used for? Give some examples. So it's helpful for creating character expressions. You can move the verts on a face around, and then an explanation of the example based on your task. You're going to be doing this bouncing ball, bouncing cube animation today. Okay, and then briefly explain what the limitations are again. Okay, I don't know if we need to go through every single box in this slide. I think that has that helped in any way. If Laura could flick to the classroom, I sort of drafted out a brief structure to use. So just to recap, so under benefits, explain what the technique is. What does it do? Give an example of how it can be used, and you are producing your own example, so you could even include screenshots from what you're doing and annotate them. And then, why does this technique exist? It wouldn't exist if it wasn't a benefit. So how is this easier than the sort of traditional equivalent? Okay, so shape key animation may be traditionally equivalent to molding plasticine, whereas keyframe animation in Blender is the sort of equivalent of hand drawing cell animation, Disney style. Limitation wise, what's the specific purpose? They'll have a very specific purpose. They're solving a specific problem. So you know, they're only really useful in certain specific context. All right, what can it not do? And then why do you think it's most challenging? Right, any questions coming in based on that? Is that helpful? 10 comments. Are they going to be appropriate for screen recording?
Shall I stop the recording for questions?